Okay, hello everyone. It's great to be here. No pressure as the opening speaker. So I am really honored and privileged to be part of this extraordinary Women on the Move movement for the third time. And today, I'm going to be sharing a simple three-step model that can literally change the trajectory of your life. When you practice this model, it will fuel your success at work, your success at home, and it will also fuel your peace. Who would like to go to sleep at night with peace? See, at Fast Forward, we believe it's possible to have both, to have extraordinary success at work and in your life, and also go to sleep at night with peace, at least most nights. Okay, so this model is being used actively by thousands of women and men all over the world, across career and life stages. So my intention is that you leave here today committed to practice it. When you practice this model, it will fuel your confidence, your ambition, your relationships, and your overall happiness. So let's dive in. A few months ago, I was at an event with numerous senior level decision makers, and I met this really dynamic woman who runs a big sales organization. And she was sharing about the change she was driving inside her company and the industry. I talked to her about Fast Forward and how we could help and how we've helped other clients drive change. She said, "I'm really interested, please follow up with me." So the next day, I made it a priority to put together a thoughtful letter, a proposal reflecting our conversation. I pressed send and I eagerly awaited her reply. Well, about a week later, there was nothing. So I sent another email, pushing this up to the top of your inbox. I would love to get together with you. 3 days later, nothing. Well, at this point, I decided that I came on too strong and I was way too much. That I just steamroll people, I'm too enthusiastic, I need to change my approach. She was probably just being polite and really isn't interested in working with us. I then proceeded to think about all the other people that didn't get back to me in 2019. And I decided they didn't like me either. And then there were those 2 parties this summer in my town that I was left out of, and I decided those women didn't like me either. Who can relate to this story? So pretty soon I was feeling slightly depressed and really unmotivated. At Fast Forward, we call this a power outage. Just a loss of confidence, a loss of power. And I beat myself up for not only a few hours, several days. And guess what? That woman did get back to me. She is authentically interested in working with Fast Forward, and we are talking about a 2020 engagement. I suffered because something happened, or in this case, didn't happen. I made up a big story about what it meant, and it was completely made up. We as human beings do this all the time. Something happens, someone says something, someone looks at us in a particular way, and we make up a whole story and add drama and add significance. Okay, this is part of being human. So today, we're going to share what to do about this. We collect evidence for our stories so that they become more true. These are some of the common stories that we hear in our travels. My manager, he doesn't appreciate me. Moving up requires too much sacrifice. It's just better to stay where I am. I know what I'm doing, not going there. I should be further along in my career. I should have gotten my MBA. It's really hard to be a working mother. I shouldn't have moved to this neighborhood. I should have done my research. I'm not like any of these other women. It's never good enough for my mother. She's so critical. Nothing I do is right. I'm never gonna meet someone. I'm just gonna be alone. I know if I were to interview each one of you, raise your hand if you can relate to one or more of these stories. Just a hunch, okay? So this is, and you know women, and you think to yourself, they have it all together. They can't have stories like this. They have them too. So this is a sisterhood. We're all in this together. You're probably wondering, when am I getting to the good news? Like, why is this the opening act? Okay? So I'm now gonna give you the good news. You have the power to choose a new story. I'm gonna share several, I'm gonna give you the model, and then I'm gonna share several examples of how I've used it in my career and my life, so that you leave here today motivated, equipped, and in action to apply it to your own life. So let me begin with my first example. When I was in my 30s, I was running a large sales organization at a media company. And I was really happy. I loved my team. We had exceeded our goals. And I could see myself there for at least 3 to 5 years. I loved my colleagues, and I really respected my manager. He was smart. He appreciated my leadership style, and he was very hands-off. One day, I was called into HR and informed that my manager was leaving the next week. And there was gonna be a reorg, and I was reporting to someone that I did not like, did not respect, and definitely didn't like or respect me. So I went home that night, shocked, disappointed. Frankly, I was angry that no one had consulted me. And I just ranted to my husband, Sean. I said, this is never going to work. This is a big mistake, and I can't believe they didn't speak to me, and I don't like him, and he doesn't like assertive women, and this is just gonna be a train wreck, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, but like, this is a disaster. And for everyone here, I just want you to be happy I'm giving you the short version. Okay, so I'm gonna headline it. Oh, sorry, this is the model. So what's your negative story? What is the cost of believing that story? And what is another story you can choose? And this model is on the Women on the Move app, so you'll be able to download it after today. Okay, so getting back to my manager story. So this is the new manager, and my story about him was, this is never gonna work. I should not be reporting to him. Well, I ranted to Sean, and then I went into work the next day, and in a senior leadership role, I acted as if everything was fine. But meanwhile, in my head, things were not fine. I was stewing, and I was busy collecting evidence for all the things he did that didn't work, and why I should not be reporting to him. And I had this one friend at work, and I would text her every day and share, well, then he did this, and then he said this. And she would agree with me, of course, and express sympathy. So about a month into this, I was really suffering, okay? I felt trapped. I felt demotivated. So step number 2 in our model is, what's the cost of believing this story? Like, I was right/righteous about my manager, but I was the one that was suffering. This started impacting my sleep, my job satisfaction, and I actually started feeling anxiety about the future. So Sean said to me, Lisa, it's fine. You should look for another job. Are you going to do that? And I said, I don't want to look for another job. I love my job. I like my team. I like my clients. I'm making incredible money. I have a great, career trajectory. I don't want to look for another job. Well, he then followed up with a practical question and said, am I going to have to listen to this every night? He had a good point. So at this point, sometimes it's very hard to do this by yourself because you get very attached to your story. Who can relate to what I'm saying? So I reached out, it's like the lifeline, okay? I reached out to my friend Wendy, who now is my Fast Forward business partner, and I said, Wendy, I need help. I'm suffering, it's impacting my sleep. I want to stay at the company, help. She said, Lisa, you have two choices. You can continue collecting evidence for your story and getting to be right, or you can choose another story and be happy. I said, I'll choose happy. So we brainstormed many different alternatives, and what I came up with was I can learn from every manager. Now, this felt fake at first because I had spent a good amount of time complaining. But literally, you have to think about your new story as a new lens to look through, viewing the same people, viewing the same circumstances, assuming they're not going to change, you are. And looking through this new lens and saying this new story, I then took actions I would not have taken. I sought out his counsel on several challenges I was facing, and he was helpful. I set up breakfast with him to get to know him as a human being. And he wasn't so bad after all. I then made a recommendation to him about how he could improve his team meeting so that it would be more impactful, and he listened. So weeks later, I felt this sense of relief. My job satisfaction had returned, and I went on to work with him for 3 years, and I did learn a lot from him. We had a productive working relationship, and most importantly, I did not suffer. I want you today to think about relationships that you have at work that you'd love to improve. What if they're not changing? What if the possibility is for you to take on this model and for you to look through a new lens at those same people? I invite you to try that on. Okay, now, our three-step model is simple, but it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because it requires overriding the system. Now, what do I mean by overriding the system? Our brains are hardwired to collect evidence for stories we already believe to be true. We love, as human beings, we love to be right. Also, our brain skews negative, okay? And this is even for you positive optimists out there. Our brain skews negative. So we literally have a deeper imprint in our life of negative things that have happened. One neuropsychologist refers to our brain as Teflon for the good and Velcro for the bad. That's why this can be so hard. But it is possible, and sometimes you're going to need help. So this model is hugely valuable in your career, and it's also going to be extremely valuable in your personal life, even if you have challenging people or challenging circumstances. So I'm now going to share a story from my own childhood to show you how the model works. This is a picture of my mom. My mother did not work, and that's me when I was 5, and my sister's 3, and my brother's 1. And my mother got married very young, and she married my father, who had a really bad temper. And when I was 5 years old, my mother found the strength to leave him and get divorced. And she got custody, and then we saw my father every other weekend. 6 years later, when I was 11, I came home from sleepaway camp, and my father told us that my mother was sick and she was no longer able to take care of us. A few months later, we found out the truth that my mother had spiraled into a deep depression. She had tried heroin, and she got addicted, and she couldn't escape its grip. So now we were living with my father, and while he wasn't physically abusive, he ran the house by fear. So we spent a lot of our time looking for opportunities to be outside of our house with other families, envying and admiring what it was like in other people's homes. My story was that we got screwed. And I had a lot of evidence that I had collected for many, many years. And I dreamed of the day that I would pay my father back by never speaking to him again. And that's exactly what I did when I got out of college. I thought I was fine. I thought I was stronger. from the experience until I did a seminar in my mid-20s. And I was able to see that I still had so much anger and so much resentment and so much negative energy around my father and my childhood, and it was costing me. So I decided it was time to give this up. I wasn't going to condone my father's behavior in our house, but it was time to forgive for my own sake, because I really wanted to find peace. And that's exactly what I did. And I made up a new story that I still have with me today. And that story is, my father did the best he could. He was 35 years old with 3 young children, and this is all he knew in terms of running a household. And my life could have looked very different. I could have collected evidence for abandonment or attachment or believed that I wasn't worthy. But I was really able to see that this adversity has made me who I am today, has given me strength, has given me independence, and made me relentlessly determined to create a home that I never had and the family that I'm so grateful for today. Okay, I am not sharing this story for sympathy. I'm sharing this story because I know you may have tough circumstances from your past or that you're dealing with in the present. People that, you just can't imagine forgiving and forgetting what's happened. And I invite you to try on this model even in those situations. It's really hard because you not only need to choose a new story, but you need to keep choosing it because you'll be tempted to revert back to the other one. So we always go back to, what is the cost? I have one life, I want to be happy, and I want minimal suffering, if any. So that's the whole theme of this. Okay, so I'm now going to share another story. We make up a lot of stories about ourselves. Who's with me? Right? Making up stories about yourself. A lot of times when we're leading our program, women say, do the men do this too? The answer is yes, but not as much, okay? Sometimes I get home and my husband's lying on the couch and I will say, what are you thinking about? And he says, nothing. I would love to think about nothing for 11 minutes. Okay, so we make up stories about ourselves. We just looked at a research study. 2,000 women, this is such a scary stat that we need to change. On average, these women were criticizing themselves 8 times a day, and they started before 9:30. We need to change this. We need to become our own biggest fans. As Marianne said earlier, you're good enough. If you're in this room, you've already made it. You're a good person. Let's start pumping ourselves up and doing the same for each other. Who's with me? Okay, so this is a picture of me and Wendy, my business partner. After, I guess, 2.5 decades, I know I look younger, in corporate America, I decided to go for my dream and launch a company that would help people thrive professionally and personally and powerfully deal with the pressure, the pace, the uncertainty, and the change. So we launched the Fast Forward Group in 2013, and a powerful woman was our first client, and she was at Facebook and is at Facebook. And we started traveling the world leading our program for teams around the world. We were on fire. We were just loving our work. We hired a team. We had huge ambitions. And I was so happy. Year 2, I started waking up at 4:30 in the morning, just freaking out, okay? Really anxious about the future, made up this whole story that we're a one-hit wonder, that we're never gonna get another client, this was a fluke, and it's just not gonna happen. We're gonna fail. Who can relate to this story? Okay, so my negative story was, I've lost my touch, and we're not going to make it. Now, it was the summer. The summer is typically slow, but I didn't take that into consideration. I just decided to beat myself up and, worry about the future and collect evidence. Literally, if someone didn't call me back, I'm like, we're not going to make it. So this went on for weeks, and I didn't tell anyone. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to alarm anyone on the team. I just acted as if everything was fine. Meanwhile, I was suffering. This was impacting my confidence, my motivation, my productivity, and my sleep. As you can tell, I really care about my sleep. Okay? So this was not good, and unfortunately, I let it go until Labor Day. Some of you are keeping your negative stories to yourself, and that's the worst. You have to find at least one person to say it out loud, because then you could potentially get help. In this case, I reached out to Wendy and my sister Debbie, who runs our faculty, and I said, I am in an extreme level 10 power outage. I need your help brainstorming a new story. Like, I'm unmotivated, I'm not being myself. So we brainstormed several possibilities, and the one I took on was I make things happen. Now, obviously, I have evidence in my life for this, but I couldn't see it at the time. So this became my new mantra. When you take on a new story, it's very important that you stop saying the old one. Because as you say these things, language creates reality. So you have to force yourself to give up the old language and adopt the new language. This became my mantra every day. I make things happen. And I would tell Debbie and Wendy, these are the 5 things I'm doing today to forward the business. And I would have to report back to them at the end of the day. I needed an accountability structure. I needed help to support my new story. Within 2 months, the pipeline was robust. We had another incredible year. And now, when that 4:30 a.m. thing happens again, I know exactly what there is to do. So here's the thing. I still make up stories about myself, and I've had this model for a very long time. But the good news is, I notice the stories quickly. I don't stay alone. Sometimes I can coach myself. But most of the time, I need at least one other perspective to help me see there could be another way to look at my circumstances. Okay. Now, this brings me to my next story. This is me when my kids were little, which is always a challenging period in the workplace, okay? I had these 3 little kids, and what I would say to myself is things like, I can't believe I'm missing another field trip. I'm not with them enough. Oh, and when I'm with them, I'm not really with them. I'm on my phone. I need to pay attention to them more. I need to stop losing my temper. I'm not connected with other moms. I'm out of the loop. I'm just not a good mother. So I spent time when my kids were little collecting evidence for this, feeling guilty, feeling like I was never fully at work or fully at home. And then a few things happened that had me see the light. So I want to share that with you today. One is I had a colleague named Peggy who was one of 11 children. And she was really close with her mother. And I was fascinated by that. And I said, Peggy, how are you so close with your mother? Like, I have 3 kids, and I'm feeling like I need to spend more time with each one of them. And she said, throughout my life, we felt so loved. And I know if you're a mother that you're giving that kind of love to your children. And I thought, I'm really good at loving my children. Like, I love them so deeply. So that was one story. And then I went to a conference where this woman, like a Marianne Lake, got up and shared, I'm so sick of people asking me, how do you do it? How do you have this big job and also have 3 children? And she said, I am overly fulfilled. I love my work. I love my children. And as I see it, I'll give you this in a minute. There was a big cost to this story: happiness, confidence, and peace. As I see it, my kids have hit the jackpot. Who's with me? feel free to take this because I took it from her. I have been telling my first of all, I'm looking for evidence each week around how good a mother I am, and also telling my children, because language matters, that they've hit the jackpot. And guess what? I recently turned 50. Thank you. My story about age is that the best is yet to come. I recently turned 50, and at my birthday party, each of my children wrote a toast, because I told them to. And each of them said, "Mom, we've hit the jackpot." So this stuff works. Feel free to take that story if it resonates with you. And then as we lead our program every week all over the world, other moms have taken on, "I'm a good mother," or "My children are loved." So take it on. I really believe that most of us have expectations that are too high. And if you can create a home where your children are loved and they're happy and they're motivated to go to school and get a job, you've done your work. You've done your work. So take that on, and I hope it makes a difference for you. Okay, last story. This story is about a colleague of mine, and her name is Beth, and her sister's name is Anne. They grew up together in New York City, and they were never close. Now Anne lives in New York, and Beth moved to San Francisco, and they each have 3 and 2 kids. Beth's story about Anne was, "My sister and I are just really different. We're not that close. Everything's fine, it's just, this is the way it is." The longer version of that was, "Anne doesn't care about my life. Anne's not rooting for my success. She's always been like this. It's fine. Like, I have close friends and all good." When Beth was turning 40, she was reflecting on her life, and she decided, this is no longer okay. I have one sister. The cost is too high. It cost their family because she would complain about her sister, and it cost the cousins because they didn't even know each other. They saw each other maybe once a year at the holidays. So Beth decided it was time to choose a new story. Sometimes you literally have to go to the opposite, which is what Beth did. So she took on the story, "My sister and I are best friends." Okay, not like we've improved our relationship. She took on the story, "Beth and I are best friends," because she wanted to stage an intervention. She didn't tell Beth she was doing this. Excuse me, Beth didn't tell Anne she was doing this. Beth then proceeded to take actions looking through this new lens that you would take with a best friend. She started texting her throughout the day, funny stories or things that happen. And sometimes Anne did not text back, but she kept going. She called her every Sunday, sometimes on video and bringing the kids into the room, taking effort, expecting nothing back, asking questions, sharing about her life, not waiting for Anne to ask her questions, just sharing about her life as if they were best friends. Within months, things were very different, and Beth then decided to take a courageous move and invite Anne out to San Francisco for spring break. She thought she's never gonna say yes. She said yes. They've been spending spring break together ever since. They can't remember how it used to be. This is the power of choosing a new story, and here's what you need to know. Beth never told Anne what she was doing. She never apologized. She just took a stand for the future after many decades to look different from the past. So look in your life where you can apply this. I'm now going to share a few more common stories that come up in our programs with women and men. Okay, if your story is, I should be further along in my career, I invite you to take on, I'm exactly where I should be. We're always encouraging people to run your own race. Have a bold vision, which is important if you want to have an extraordinary life, and let's stop comparing ourselves to everyone else. Who's with me? Next, I know a lot of you are busy saying, I'm really busy, stressed or tired. Here's another approach. People say, Lisa, how are you? Particularly in Q4. And I say, I'm in demand. Next. Oh, I don't have time for friends. Is anyone saying this? When I moved to the suburbs 20 years ago, I literally said that to my sister. I'm like, you know, I'm barely keeping in touch with my college friends, my work friends. I'm not going to meet anyone. And of course, I went to a few events and parties, and I met some amazing women. So my news story is, I can't have enough amazing women in my life. Who's with me? Yeah. And I have to say, I've had the privilege of working with JP Morgan Chase teams for 4 years. And I'm just like struck every time by how many incredible women there are in this company. So if you haven't already made some meaningful, close friends, make sure you do that. It's really helpful in the workplace. Okay, and the last one I want to spend a little bit more time on, because I know some of you in this room and across the country and Europe are saying moving up requires sacrifice. I want to challenge this and invite you to look at it in a new way. You see, the cost of choosing comfort is very high. I have done this twice in my career, and they were very short chapters because I didn't want to get out of bed. Choosing comfort has a cost. But what if moving up is an opportunity for more flexibility, for more opportunity, for more learning, for more growth, for more people to delegate to? I have always taken that on, okay? Every job has enormous pressure. That's my experience. So if you're going to deal with the pressure, let's move up. Let's make more money. Let's make a bigger contribution. Who's with me? Moving up also enables you to be part of the change that we want to see. I was so inspired by the numbers that Sam talked about, but we need to keep going. We need to keep going, and we not only need to get more women in leadership because the research shows it's good for every company, but we need to help women thrive once they get there. So that's what today is all about. I can work and live on my terms. I have watched women take a stand and tell their managers, this is what I need to be successful. I know the role has always been done this way. I believe I can produce the results doing it my way. We get what we're willing to stand for. That is my invitation today. Okay, you now have our simple 3-step model. You can download this on the Women on the Move app so you can visually look at it at home and at work. What there is to do is practice. Like any new model, you've got to start, I want you to become a story radar. Start looking for stories at work, stories at home, and start looking at the cost to you of those stories, because that is the only motivation to give it up. You may decide that you're choosing to change your circumstances. It's time to get a different role. It's time to get out of a bad relationship. It's time to move neighborhoods or move cities. But if you're not going to change your circumstances, or you can't, you always have the power to choose a new story. Every single day, you can choose to be right, or you can choose to be happy. It's entirely up to you. Thank you.